Good evening. Welcome to our free virtual workshop for unpaid caregivers for those caring for persons with dementia. Visit augustalibrary.org to view or download a copy of the free workbook for this presentation. Printed copies will be available upon request at the library. Tonight's presenter is Cassie McLean. She's the Regional Community Coordinator for Wisconsin Literacy Incorporated, based out of Merrill, Wisconsin.
Hello, thank you, Stacy. And today we're going to be talking about and focusing on how health literacy can help you and the people that you care for with dementia. The program today is supported by a grant from Retirement Research Foundation for Aging. And this program is for those of you out there who are providing care for a loved one without getting paid for it. You are truly the heroes out there. And in Wisconsin, there are over 500,000 of you. And I just want to start out by saying thank you. And I'm going to have to, my slides are not advancing, so we're going to I'm going to take a quick break here. We're going to stop that. I'm going to see if we can get this going here. Stacy, I'm so sorry, but my slides are not advancing. All right, we're going to start again here. Let me try something.
I don't see anything at this end why they shouldn't be.
Yep, I'm going to just see if we can get this going again. There we go. So what I want to say is thank you after all of that for everything that you have done. So Wisconsin Health Literacy is a statewide nonprofit organization that offers education and training on health literacy. We provide a lot of different community projects, and you may have seen one of our other presentations, but we offer them throughout the state, and we've been privileged to do them virtually too. We also offer a health literacy summit every other year, and we will be doing one in April of next year. We're a division of Wisconsin Literacy, which is a coalition of over 70 different literacy programs throughout the state. Today, we're going to talk about health literacy, what it is, how it works, and what you can do to improve communications when you're talking with different health providers. And we'll also take a look at some different resources that are available for you. The toolkit or workbook that Stacy mentioned is to help you improve caregiving for people who have dementia. But it can also help you communicate better with health providers, with people with dementia, and also family members. Sometimes we forget that just because the caregiver is the one who is working day to day with the person with dementia, there are other family members that need to be communicated with also. The program was put together with what we call a co-creation team, and there were several folks who helped us put this program together who are unpaid caregivers working with family members. And this is a quote from one of them. In doing our work, she happened to say, "Alzheimer's shows no gratitude, sympathy, or empathy. So as the caregiver, you must show all three." And it's such a difficult thing to do, but it's really part of what being a caregiver is all about. So just very briefly, what is dementia? Well, dementia is a brain disease. Dementia is not a normal part of aging. Alzheimer's disease is the most common type of dementia. So when I say dementia is not a normal part of aging, it's normal for all of us to start to forget things occasionally, to forget where we put our keys, to forget why we walked into the room. But it isn't normal for us to not remember what the keys are for or how the keys work. That's an early sign that the forgetting that we're experiencing is not the normal type of forgetting that we have. That's a part of aging. So what is health literacy? Well, there are really two sides to health literacy. One is a person's ability to access, understand, and use their health information. The other side of it is a provider or a caregiver's ability to communicate health information in a way that the person can understand. Now, this might be, the two sides might be you and the person that you're taking care of. It might be the provider and the person you're taking care of, or it might be the provider and you as the caregiver. But health literacy has those two sides, and both are just as important. So what is low health literacy? How do you know if you don't have good health literacy? Well, people with low health literacy may have difficulty finding health services. They may not understand spoken and written communication. And as dementia progresses, this becomes worse and worse. They may have difficulty sharing information with doctors or with their caregiver or with other family members, difficulty filling out forms, managing chronic health conditions, taking medicine correctly, reading medicine labels, using health insurance. When you have issues with any or all of these areas, that's a sign that you have low health literacy. And it's not always your fault. Healthcare and the tools that we use to communicate in healthcare can be very complicated. So what's it like? I want you to just take a moment and read this. And now I want you to just think about what that felt like, because that's what it feels like when we start throwing lots of information out at people, asking them to read things, asking them to listen to things that we're saying. Just so you know, this is actually what it says. It's actually just written backwards. It says, your physician has recommended that you have a colonoscopy. Colonoscopy is a test for colon cancer. It involves inserting a flexible viewing scope into your rectum. You must drink a special liquid the night before the examination to clean out your colon. First of all, even if this was written correctly, that's confusing language, and some of the words that are used are not very good. But if you don't read very well and you're trying to understand this information, it's just going to be very difficult. So which of the following do you think is the single strongest predictor of an individual's health status. We have age, income, literacy skills, employment status, education level, racial or ethnic group. I can tell you that all of these do impact a person's health status, but the one that is the single strongest predictor is actually literacy skills. Along with that, 20% of American adults read at or below the 5th grade level. So most healthcare materials are written above the 10th grade level. So as I said, if you feel like you're having difficulty communicating with a provider or understanding information that's being presented, some of it is because of the way these materials are presented. Remember, I said that health literacy is really about a person's ability to access, understand, and use their materials. Sometimes it's just because those materials are written at such a high level. We're making changes with that, and many of the healthcare facilities out there are working very hard to make sure that their materials are written at an appropriate level, but that's not universal. And so we have to make sure we're doing what we can to keep that communication going. So who's at risk for low health literacy? Well, almost 60% of seniors have basic or below basic health literacy. They can circle the appointment date on an appointment slip, but really not much more. It can be very difficult to understand. So why older adults? Why are they the ones that we seem to focus on for this? Well, first of all, you have, as you get older, decreased reading skills. Your hearing and vision can start to decline. Older adults actually experience more depression and anxiety, which can make it even more difficult to comprehend what you're trying to read. That short-term memory loss that we talked about. Older adults also have more chronic illnesses, so you're using more medical services, which can make it more difficult to tie everything together. And also there's more risk for medication mistakes because older adults tend to take more medication. So if we can improve health literacy, how does that help caregivers? Well, if we can improve health literacy, you're going to be better able to take care of the people you love. If you are a caregiver for someone with dementia, if we can improve your health literacy, you can better care for the people you love. You'll feel more confident, satisfied in the care that you're providing. You'll be better able to communicate with health professionals and other family members. And you'll be able to support the person you love who has dementia so they can stay in their current living situation longer. We're going to talk a little bit now about medications and health literacy. So labels can be very confusing. And this is actually a situation that happened. Not to me, but to another person. My grandma accidentally took 3 times the daily dose of a medication for about 4 days due to a label that stated, take 1 half pill twice daily. She was actually just supposed to take a half pill 2 times a day, but with the 1 on the label before the half, it made it look like she was supposed to take 1.5 pills twice a day. And I will tell you, when I first read this, I thought, well, she didn't take too much. It says take 1.5 pills twice daily. Confusing labels can lead to problems. And one of the things we always have to do is make sure we understand what's on that label. Pharmacies can be feel like a very rushed situation sometimes. Sometimes you go in and there's a line of people and you feel like, I don't want to take the time. There's other people waiting, but always, always, always clarify with the pharmacist if you have any questions. If you don't feel like you have time right then to take care of things, schedule a meeting with a pharmacist or a health provider to review all of your medicines. Some of our healthcare systems, our hospitals, even offer these appointments that you can just go in for free and sit down with the pharmacist, and they will go over everything. Always ask the pharmacist or your doctor all the questions that you have. Remember, use a pill box when you, if you're starting to see that you have a lot of medications that you're trying to manage. One thing to be careful of, I know when I was helping out my mother-in-law, we would put all her pills in her container, in her pill box. But as her dementia started to get worse and worse, we realized that, one, she was having difficulty even opening those little tabs on the pill box. But she also was not able to tell if it was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. So we would come over and we'd have to question, gosh, Sunday is still closed. Does that mean she didn't take Sundays? Or did she take Sundays on Friday or Fridays on Sunday? So you want to make sure that the system you set up really works, whether you are the person giving them the pills or if they're still managing it themselves. There also are some very nice actual electronic pill boxes that are out there now that can take some of that questioning away. Always keep a list of all current medicines. When you go to the doctor for an appointment, they always say, bring all your medications in their original containers. Do that. That is how they can verify that what you're doing and what you're taking or giving your loved one is actually correct and the way that they mean it to be. That also helps them see if there happen to be any outdated medications or if there are any medications that they should no longer be taking. So always do that. And then one thing that sometimes comes up as dementia starts to get worse is sometimes the person who was once able to easily swallow a pill may not be able to do that anymore. So ask about other forms of medicine if the person you care for can't swallow a pill. Not all medicines can be in all forms, but you should always ask. There are some pills that they can do as a dissolving pill, so they don't actually have to swallow it. They can just keep it in their mouth. They can come in liquid, or some can even come in a powder form that you can put in a little bit of pudding or something like that. But it really depends on the medication if that can be in a different form. Also, sometimes pharmacies will use different pill manufacturers. So colors, sizes, shapes of the pills can be very different from one refill to the next. So always make sure you really know what you're picking up when you get that refill, so you can make sure that it's there. And sometimes, you know, it can be confusing for the person with dementia too. They may be used to a certain pill looking a certain way, and they start to question, why does this one look different? What happened to that white one that I was taking? So you just want to make sure you're always staying very on top of medications. Also, for every new medicine, whether it's prescription, over the counter, or even just a vitamin, ask the pharmacist about side effects and reactions with other medicine. And that's particularly true with over-the-counter and vitamins, because we might think, well, it's over the counter, it's just a vitamin, that's not going to be an issue. It can be an issue. So always ask. They are there. They have a line that says consult when you go into the pharmacy. So always ask. It's best to ask a pharmacist, but there is also a resource through AARP, and it's their drug directory, side effects, and interaction checker. please always first ask the pharmacist, but if that pharmacist is not available, this is a nice resource that you can use. So talking
Kathy?
with the, yes?
Excuse me. There still seems to be a problem with the slides not showing. Can you try clicking on that green box for the share screen? Click on that. And then select your slide from that window.
Hang on just a minute here. I'm going to have to, okay, let me see. So they haven't seen any of the slides?
No,
Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay, hang on here. Now I have to, okay, just hang on, folks. Take a sip of water. Okay, where did you go here? All right, let's see. All right, I've got that. Okay, what is going on here? Now I, hang on, folks. I am working on this. All right, share my screen. Let me. Okay. So are you seeing it now?
yes, now. So I don't know if you want to just flick through the slides, you know, a little bit slowly to kind of get where you're at. I'm sorry, I had typed in the chat box and I was hoping you had seen it, and then I was trying to find a good place to interrupt, so I apologize.
Oh gosh, okay. Okay, so I can, let's see. So we've talked here. Okay, let me just go here. We'll figure, can you see the slides?
Yes.
Okay. All right. See, look at what we've done here. Okay, so we are at the point where we're going to talk about talking with a health provider. So what can you do in making sure your communication with the health provider is what it should be? So as I said earlier, good health literacy is a two-way street, and it's about accessing, understanding, and using the information. So when you're taking your loved one to see a health provider, make sure you're preparing for that appointment. You want to write a list of all of the questions that you have and things that you want to talk about. Take that list with you. Another thing that has really made a difference lately is you can help the doctor prepare for the appointment. A lot of the health systems today have a portal where you can send notes to your doctor. So I used to do this when I would take my mother-in-law for her appointments. I would go into that portal and I'd say, this is what we want to talk about. These are the questions I have for this appointment today. So when we came in, the doctor knew exactly what we wanted to talk about, and it's really a good way to use that time. And then before you leave, make sure you review what you talked about with the doctor. So doctors are trained to use something called teach back, and it's a way to check understanding. It's not meant to quiz you, but it's a way of that they're supposed to work this so that they can see if they did a good job explaining things. And you can do that also. You can, if the doctor just simply says, so do you have any questions? What you can do is just kind of review back with the doctor the things that you heard in this appointment, the things that you talked about. If there's a misunderstanding, then it's up to the doctor to re-explain in a different way, and then you do the teach back again. So it's an important step for making sure that that comprehension is there, that we're understanding what's there. Another thing that we can always talk about, and if you've been caring for someone with dementia, this is such a difficult thing to talk about, but it's talking with your loved one. So what can you do to make sure that communicating with your loved one is as good as it can be? First, always be clear and direct. I always say, introduce yourself and explain what you are doing. Even if you are the daughter, introduce yourself. Just say, hi, Mom, I'm here today too. Or, hi, Mom, it's me, Cassie. I'm here, just to make sure we have a little fun today. But introduce yourself. When I was, my mother had dementia also. And whenever I would go to see her, I wouldn't just assume that she knew who I was. Sometimes she thought I was one of her sisters. Sometimes she thought I was her mother. But if I told her who I was when I first came in, that made things just so much easier. We could skip that step of her feeling a little embarrassed because she thought I was somebody else, and me having to go through that process of explaining who I was. Do it every time. It's a really simple thing. Talk directly to the person you are caring for. Make eye contact with them. Remember, their hearing may not be as good, their vision may not be as good, they're having difficulty putting things together. So make eye contact, talk directly to the person. Don't be standing at the sink doing the dishes and hollering over your shoulder and thinking that they're going to understand what's going on. Don't talk with other people in the room about the person with dementia. And this is something that can sometimes happen when you're with a healthcare provider, or it can happen if there are other members of the family around. They can sometimes forget that the person with dementia is in the room and is right there. Make them a part of the conversation and don't talk about them as though they aren't even there. Of course, create a welcoming environment, be respectful and sensitive. The next one, be patient. The simplest thing to say, the hardest thing to do. And as dementia progresses, it becomes more and more difficult because you have a feeling that your loved one is going to respond or react a certain way, but as the disease progresses, that changes. So being patient is so critical. And sometimes the biggest part or the biggest ability to be patient is to step away from the situation. Give yourself a timeout if you need one. If you feel that you're starting to lose control or you may say something you will regret, just give yourself a timeout, give yourself a little mantra, count to 10, do what you need to do, but being patient is going to be so critical. And avoid saying, don't you remember we just talked about that? That's what dementia is. They don't remember. And as I said, as the disease progresses, this can become more and more of an issue. With our co-creation team, one of the things that they said was, when you feel frustrated, try to remember it's the disease, it's not the person. Try to remind yourself, Mom is just having a bad day today. It's the dementia that's bad, not Mom. And I know that those last two things are the most difficult that you can do, but try as best you can to give yourself a timeout if needed and pull yourself back together for it. Another thing that can be helpful when you're communicating with your loved one is use plain, simple language, words with 1 or 2 syllables, simple sentences with one idea per sentence. Don't use jargon or acronyms, and give very specific instructions. Instead of saying something like, Go get your shoes on. We're going to go to town. Remember, we need to go to the grocery store today. Say, go get your shoes. Sit down on the couch. Let's put your shoes on. You do it one thing at a time, very specific instructions. And that can be helpful. Name the objects instead of saying it or that. Don't say something like, oh, bring that over to me right now. You might be pointing at something on the table. Your loved one doesn't know what you're pointing at. Instead, say, bring me the spoon. So just being very careful that with your language, it can make such a difference. Use an active voice, not a passive voice, meaning be direct. Don't allow a lot of choice within the conversation. One way of looking at it is turning questions into answers by saying the solution, not the question. So don't say, do you want to go to the grocery store today, or do you want to go for a walk in the park? Just say, let's go for a walk in the park. And that can kind of help them to understand what they're doing. Another simple thing that we sometimes forget about is the importance of doing math for people with dementia. Don't expect them to understand if you're giving them information that's in the form of a percentage or something like that. They're not going to remember the math or the numbers. So just be careful that you either are not putting that into your conversation or do the math for them. Also, slow down. Speak clearly and slowly. Pause at the end of sentences and before changing topics. Remember, their brain has a disease that is causing it not to work as well as it used to. So please make sure you're just speaking clearly, slowly, and pausing. You can reinforce your words with pictures, but use pictures that clearly explain your message. For example, which of these two pictures do you think would be better to use if you were talking about eating healthy foods? The lovely couple out there taking a walk, maybe going to a farmer's market to get some food, that's fine. But for your loved one, that's not going to communicate the message about let's eat. The other thing with pictures is it can be a nice way to even have a conversation with your loved one. You can talk about, if you put different pictures of food out there, what do you like to eat? You can get a conversation going. The picture can kind of start the conversation. Also, don't give too much information. Only 2 to 3 need to know pieces of information at a time. And as the disease progresses, 1 piece of information may be all that you can do. Do not overwhelm with details. This can cause anxiety. And what do we know about anxiety? That makes it even more difficult to comprehend what's going on. Use words and comparisons that are meaningful to the person you care for. You may never have called a movie a flick, but if your loved one did, then use that word, use that term. Encourage questions, not so much from your loved one, because they may not have any questions. They may, as the disease progresses, the way that they do questioning may not be very helpful. But your other family members might have questions. So remember, you can talk with other family members. All those tips that I just gave you about keeping things clean and simple and clear, talk to the family members that same way and encourage them to ask questions. If they have things they want to ask the doctor, or they have questions about how this disease progresses, encourage them to ask questions. You can always be the one who gets that information for them, but be encouraging to them. How can you help the people you care for with memory? Well, obviously memory is a big issue here, but written instructions can sometimes help. The same thing goes for written instructions as for spoken instructions. Keep things simple. One idea on the note. And also be very careful that you're not overloading with notes. I know sometimes, we think, well, I'm going to put a note on the TV, and I'm going to put a note on the refrigerator, and I'm going to put a note on the table, and I'm going to put a note on the dresser, and a note on the mirror in the bathroom. And pretty soon there's so many notes all over the place that it just becomes more confusing. So use written instructions, but do it strategically. Be very careful with that. Learn what part of the day works best for the person you care for. In general, mornings are usually better for folks that have dementia, but that's not universal. There are a lot of people that have always been night owls, and for them, later in the day might be a time when they become a little more cognizant of what's going on. So just kind of learn what part of the day works best. Don't assume a certain part of the day is best. And then find strategies to help when the person you care for becomes frustrated or upset. Strategies to help them and strategies to help you. And that may mean, as we said earlier, taking that time out if you need to, having someone you can call who you can just say, I'm so frustrated with this. I don't know what to do. I need a break. Have that plan in place. If it's going smoothly now, have that plan in place, because as dementia progresses, it can become more and more difficult. And there can be things that work with your loved one to help them if they're becoming frustrated or upset. It can be just stopping what you're doing and letting them sit for a moment. It can be making sure you're not overwhelming them with sound and noise. Sometimes if you go into an area, if you happen to be in the grocery store and there's a lot of people around, and that can become very overwhelming. I know for my mom, we would take walks in the park, but there were certain areas of the park that became she got very frustrated in. And I realized she was fine if we were in areas where it was open and bright and sunny, but if we got in an area where the trees were a little thicker, that was very upsetting to her. So it was just realizing that even though I would have liked to keep going and walk down that path, we didn't go that way because it was more difficult for her. There are a few special health literacy considerations I want to talk about, and that's just and I questioned if I should put this in here, but one of my coworkers suggested that I do. And that is because she works with, her mother-in-law is from Mexico. And she found that even though for her, she herself didn't have different cultural considerations, for her mother-in-law, there were some things that she needed to consider. Because she didn't really know how differences in beliefs about medicine and healing practices, caregiving roles, any past trauma, or just not being familiar with our healthcare system. So always realize that in some situations, if you're in a situation like that, you do need to take into consideration the culture. So what else? Sometimes the word Alzheimer's can be very difficult for a person to hear. So instead of saying Alzheimer's or even dementia, just use the term memory. Your memory's, I know your memory's been a little off lately, or I know you have some trouble with your memory. That can be gentler to hear than saying, you have Alzheimer's. So just, kind of something to be aware of there. Also, people with dementia can have behaviors or say comments that can be very hurtful to the people who care for them, go back to that statement that they're not bad. They're having the dementia is bad that day. So you have to just give them a break when that happens and find support for yourself. Also remember, facial expressions, tone of voice, body language are all important forms of communication. Remember, people with Alzheimer's disease or other dementia may not always remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel. Emotions are often the last to be forgotten, if at all. So just always keep that in mind. And remember, you are not alone. More than 6 million Americans have Alzheimer's. Over 11 million Americans provide unpaid care for people with Alzheimer's and other dementia. And it is always important to take care of yourself, and even more so when you're helping take care of another person. Stress, burnout, fears and tears, they are real and they are going to happen. So have a plan in place and do not be afraid to ask for help. There's family caregiver support through the GUAR organization. They have wonderful information. And for you locally, every county has an aging and disability resource center. Some have more resources available than others, but you can always get information from them. And they have special caregiver tools, special folks who are there to help you. And always the Alzheimer's Association also has a wealth of information out there. And so once again, I just want to say thank you for all that you do. If you have questions for me, I'm Cassie at wisconsinliteracy.org. And Stacy, were there any questions that came up during the presentation?
No, I haven't seen any in the chat yet.
Okay, great. And then just a reminder that the workbook is available at the Augusta Public Library or through the link that Stacy will have with this presentation. So Stacy, thanks for having me today.
Thank you, Cassie, and thank you everyone for watching. Have a great evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.